Keri René Fuller. Look at you in your little like ambiance-filled candlelit environment.
I actually moved this candle because I was like, I am missing something.
Just like a rogue candle on the
Yes.
on the the
Yeah.
shelf.
Come on, you should be very familiar with candles and windows.
I am. I am. Thank you so much. Chag Sameach. Happy holidays. Um, Hi, love. I'm so excited for you to be here. But before we jump on in for like how we got to know each other and who you are and all that, who are you today?
Today, I am fun employed, I suppose.
Okay.
I just finished my second contract with Six the Musical on Broadway. Um, and now I am, I've done various other things prior, but this was my most recent journey. I'm currently in an acting program trying to, not be shit. And then writing my own music. I've been really trying, which is a very vulnerable and terrifying thing to do, but so worth it at the
Mhm.
end of the day. Um, so I've been doing a lot of that and seeing very open to what is going to happen next.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what that is.
None of us do. I mean, if we did, that would be a very different life that we would lead if we all had crystal balls and like actually
Wouldn't that be
knew.
amazing? Actually,
We
that would
don't
probably suck a little.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know. I don't know how I'd feel about it, honestly. Like part of me is really curious about it. And then it's like if you knew the way that everything would go, then you wouldn't actually be present for any of it. You wouldn't try as hard because
Exactly.
it just I mean, arguably I wouldn't have like met you if that were the case.
Exactly. And then we would have never kissed.
Truly. So context wise, Carrie and
This is a
I
great segue,
I'm
actually.
obsessed. Carrie and I did a production of Title of Show. Um with Max Hunter and Josh Daniels. We were one of the first shows that came back, I guess, quote unquote, post pandemic in
Right.
summer 2021 um, at the Brooklyn Navy Yards. And you were my Heidi to my Susan, and I was your Susan to your
Yes.
Heidi, and we got to swap liquids from our mouths.
Exactly. Don't worry, we were tested.
We were
That was like
tested.
prime time testing.
Oh my god, it was wild. But I mean, I talk about this all the time that I literally received an email from Max, who is the director and producer and also was in it with us, and, like, offering for me to, like, do suits. He's like, "I found you, and I think you'd be great," and he, like, threw your name into the mix as, like, the as it's, like, to make it sound like it was legit, being like, "We're doing it with" You laugh, but it's real, and honestly, that was the
So
only thing
funny.
that didn't make me delete the email. I was like, "Oh, yeah, well, if Keri René Fuller is doing it, then, like, clearly you know somebody real."
The memory chick.
Well, not only that, but because yeah, I mean, I knew you from Cats because a friend of mine was also on tour with you. I mean, it's just like the world gets really
Yeah.
small, but if he hadn't literally name dropped you, I would have been like, this is going into spam.
Exactly. I totally get it. Who's
Yeah.
Max Hunter anyways?
Max, when you listen to this, because you will, we love you. So we did title the show together. It was a totally wild experience. And since then, you have been on this wild journey, which I'd love to hear more about. We can start with six and then like maybe go backwards if you're cool
Great.
with that. But you have
Yeah.
had such an interesting non-linear journey with most of your career
Mhm.
and more specifically with six. And I would love to hear how that all began for you, like timeline wise, and we can go from there.
Yeah, it's so interesting, like, hearing it called a career because to me, like, being involved in, every aspect of my own life,
Is that how that works? That you're
it
involved in your own
doesn't
life?
apparently. Um, I have never really thought of myself as, like, having a career. I've always thought of it as doing a series, being involved in a series of, like, cool and weird things, and
Why is that? Why
so
don't
it's very
you why don't you refer I mean, there's neither here nor there about like whether it's good or bad, but why have you never thought about
right.
it like that?
It's funny because, this is really the first time I think I have really thought about that
Like with me
in
asking
this
you?
moment
This
in
literal
this
moment.
moment right now. Because, like, I've heard, like, in the acting world, or really in any world, you hear career, 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 this person's career, and it is very interesting in the context of yourself really thinking about, do I actually picture what I have done
Mm.
as a career? Because, like you said, it's so nonlinear. And typically when you think of careers, it's like, oh, they've been a dentist with their own practice for their dental career for,
Yeah.
20 plus years. So it's interesting because, it's been 20 plus years for me as well, but it's been so fractured, and I've done so many different things in the middle of all of the things that determined my career.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that's a very interesting thought that I literally just had in this moment.
Amazing.
Can't wait to think about that more.
You're
Um,
welcome, I guess.
no, it's good. It's good. So yeah, with six, seeing as that's like the most recent thing, it was such a not strange, because strange makes it sound like a negative connotation, but it was so odd
Mhm.
because I had my very first audition for it. I remember being on the subway car on my way to rehearsal for Cats.
'Kay.
This is like in December of 2018.
Great.
And we're rehearsing at New 42, and New Music Fridays pops up, and it's like Six the musical, and I was like, at this point in time I was still like, oh, like musicals are cute, at this point in time. I mean, I would have felt very hypocritical on my way to Cats rehearsal
Yeah.
if I was like, musicals, rah, rah.
I was like, of
Um,
all the musicals to
of
think
all musicals too,
to be like
Cats.
yeah, I mean, let's be clear. Cool,
Yeah.
let's
Wow. But I was like, wow, they really will write a musical about anything these days. They really will. And I was very hesitant going into it because in college, one of my main interests was European history.
Mm,
And so I obviously had studied the Six Wives of Henry VIII multiple times over. And so I was like, God. But I listened to it and I was like, oh, this music is good.
mm,
This is good music. Like, somehow they've managed to make music theater sound poppy enough to where I don't think that I'm listening to music theater
yeah.
100%. And I was like, that would be a really cool thing to be involved in. This was the West End recording. That one day. So I just go on about my cat's journey, dressing up as a cat 8 times a week and singing Memory.
We'll unpack that after this, but
We'll
yeah.
unpack it. And then I'm at the very end of my cat's journey, actually, and I get an audition for Six. And
Timeline wine, when is this? Yeah.
this is a year later. So like I'm in Toronto around Christmas time of 2019.
Okay.
So I'm at the end of my contract because we set out at the very beginning of January of that year. So I get an audition and they're like, they broke it down, not necessarily character traits, but more like singing qualities, like vocal qualities, and like not celebrity, pop star inspirations. And I was obviously submitted for Seymour. And me, I can sing a ballad. Um
Not only can you sing a ballad, you could shred a ballad. I mean, your vocal I mean, sure. Yep.
to
Mhm.
shreds.
Literal
um
shreds.
and so they were like, don't sing from the show, sing an actual pop song. So I was like, great. I sang You Don't Really Know Me by Jessie J. And I had actually one of the local guitarists in Toronto from our pit play for me.
'Cause you had to do this via self-tape because you were still on tour.
Via self tape. This
Pre-pandemic
was
self-tape. Mhm.
pre-pandemic self tape. So it was like when self tapes were still, there was a little optimism surrounding the self tape. Now it's just pure dread. Um, so I I submitted that and I got amazing feedback. But and then I got a call back. They're like, sing actual material, and so I sang Heart of Stone and submitted it. But then I didn't hear anything back from that, and
So wait, you got a callback or you didn't?
I did get a call back, but I didn't hear anything after that. And so I was like, okay, whatever, ship has sailed. They're probably going with celebrities anyways.
Did you have to come into New York for the callback?
No, that was still taped because I was still on the road
Okay.
for Cats. It was just it was right before I left. And so I get back, didn't really hear anything. But then this was for the Broadway. This was like for the Broadway round. But when we were in Chicago earlier that year, they were doing their Chicago sit down.
Got it.
So I was kind of like we were like around the corner from the theater, from their theater. So I was like exposed to the world, and I was like, oh, that's that musical that I thought was like kind of stupid, but then turned out being pretty cool. Um, so then I got the audition for it, then call back.
Got it.
And then life went on for a couple months. Um, And all of a sudden I got like, "Hey, will you do a work session?"
And this was
Zoom.
now in the pandemic, or we're still right before
So,
pandemic?
still right before
Okay.
pandemic, because this was probably February,
Wow.
very, very beginning of March. And when I tell you, like, beginning of the pandemic, like, moments before the ball
Yeah.
dropped. And, so I did a work session just over Zoom, and then I
With whom?
continued,
Who were you with?
with the Broadway resident director,
Great.
essentially, or the associate director.
Mhm.
And so I did that work session, thought it went very well. The pandemic then hit, so obviously they wanted to keep working because at this point in time, we didn't know what was going to come
Yeah.
of being shut down. We didn't know how long it was going to last. They're like, let's keep the ball rolling, because we never know like when we'll be able to come back and be in rooms again.
Were you going in for, at this point, like, a specific, were you
It was
still
always Seymour,
okay.
always Seymour. And so it was only ever Heart of Stone and the monologue prior to Heart of Stone. And then everything really shut down. So at this point in time, I've sent in self tapes, or I've had a session about 5 or 6
All
sessions,
virtual.
all virtual,
Over the course of how long?
over the course of like 3 4 months.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so then pandemic, and then in the fall of 2021, right? Yeah, 2021, they started doing auditions again. Sent another self-tape in, um, just to refresh. And then they started having dance calls and work sessions. And at this point, and I'm called in every time, getting callbacks every single time. And at this point in time, like I know these combinations like the back of my hand.
Yeah.
So by the time I learned that I did not book because in the fall it transitioned instead of Broadway because they had cast the Broadway company. This was for the Aragon tour. And when by the time I found out, I believe it was like November 2021 that I did not book the tour. I remember because my boyfriend and I were upstate for Thanksgiving, and I do have to say, being upstate in the snow and nature really lessened the blow.
You're like, "Look
It
how
lessened
beautiful it is. Wow, this is so," I'm
just
crying into my, like,
tears
yeah.
streaming into the hot tub. I'm
Yeah.
just like, but this is also so nice.
Yeah. You're smelling the
And
trees. Exactly.
yeah,
You're, like, bloated from turkey. Exactly. Mhm.
exactly,
Yep.
exactly. It's all about balance.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was disappointed. I definitely was disappointed because I really thought that I had something cool to bring to it.
Also because at this point, you've literally been involved
Like
in
15 times, 15, 16
yeah,
times.
over the course of, I guess, 2 years.
Yeah, pretty much.
Mhm.
Pretty much from the end of 2020 to the fall of 2021.
Yeah.
I really
Well, you said
sorry,
end of 2019. Yeah.
2019, I
Yeah.
lost an entire year.
2 years. Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I was disappointed to say the least. However, um, I just go on my life because that's all you can do. And so I was like, okay, guys, my savings is gone. Like the pandemic sucked it all up. And so I was looking for a survival job, and I was like, let me be a trainer again. My intro to New York was very like, I'm a trainer. This is how I'm going to make money. I need a free gym membership. Let's
Yeah.
go. And so I got a job as a trainer at F45, and literally my 4th day into work, I had just gotten home from the morning shift. This is in February. um they were like, hey, can you come play Seymour for like 13 weeks at least? Can you start rehearsal tomorrow? And I was like, I'm on the road, like what? And there's no Broadway. Abby needed to go on a medical leave. And so I just hopped right in. And the ironic thing about it is that I rehearsed with the Aragon tour when they were rehearsing. So I'm like going in, mind you, this process was also crazy because I'm going in, like I get the call and I go on stage in 2 weeks.
I also just wanna, like, pause for a moment before we get further down into this. How, again, to recap your journey, you've gone in over 15 times over the course
Yeah.
of 2 years
Yeah.
for Broadway and tour, and
Yeah.
this time, the call that you get isn't, "Hey, here's a runway." It was, "You don't even need to send us a
Tomorrow.
thing. You are coming in
Just come.
tomorrow for
Yeah.
This is your official Broadway debut?
Well, my principal debut,
That
because I did Waitress in 2018, at the same theater, you know? We don't
Yep,
need to touch on Waitress very much, but, like, it was very nice to be back in the same theater.
yeah. Yep,
So
yep.
yeah, literally they were like, "Just show up tomorrow," and I was like, okay." And I texted my boss and I was like, luckily they're Broadway fans. And I was like, "Hey, I know you just hired me. However, I can't work here anymore."
And I'll get you standing room tickets at some point.
Yeah,
Thank you for
come
understanding.
see the show.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, that I started. I rehearsed in the both Joy and I, she replaced Anna as Par, and we both went in at the same time. And we rehearsed in the back of the room. Um,
While the tour gals were all rehearsing.
and I was like, they had like 4 or 5 weeks to learn this show, and we have 2 weeks until we're just thrust
Mhm.
into the abyss. Luckily it's only a 90-minute musical. Um, but yeah, so I did that. It was amazing. My first contract was definitely felt like I was trying to prove a lot.
Mhm.
I felt like
In the Abby subbing moment,
just
the
not as a yeah, in the medical
right.
leave contract, because I was like, I only have a limited time here. I really want to make my mark. I just put a lot of pressure on myself and didn't allow myself to fully fall into what it could have been. You know, I was resistant because I felt like I needed to prove aspects of, I'm a good actress. I can make this sound better, or I can make this like look like real acting, or whatever bullshit I lied to
Mhm.
myself about.
Mhm.
So
And
why
was that something that you were feeling externally from, like, external pressure of people being like, "Oh, you're in 6 now. You are here because Abby is not here." Like, was it that, or was it you just wanting to really prove to
I think it was more myself. I
Yeah,
think that myself, and I think it was a lot about, as embarrassing as it is, like about validation.
yeah. It's not
Um
embarrassing, it's real. I mean, that's what I wanna talk to you about. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of my career my career has
See?
been about validation, which is why I've allowed myself to make certain choices about what I have and have not been a part of. Um,
Are you saying that if you didn't crave the validation, you might not have chosen some of the projects that you've been a part of?
yeah, or I wouldn't have auditioned for certain projects
Mhm.
that just didn't align with what I wanted to put into my being and
Mhm.
the world and my career. I'm very proud of what I've been able to achieve. However, moving forward, this contract, the first one in particular, taught me a lot about myself. It gave me, like, kind of sort of like a set of balls to be like, okay, like, let's really like look at what you want, like what do I actually want from a career versus what do I feel like I deserve.
Mm.
Because I think coming from the mentality of like, oh, I'm just grateful to be here, like there's so many people that would want to be in my shoes, you sell yourself a little short. And that's kind of where I've operated from a lot of my life. And so having the opportunity to reassess that
Was
was
there
very
something
valuable.
in this particular contract, like, there like a light bulb moment that made you realize like, "Oh, I've been operating this way for a while. Let's see if I wanna recalibrate," or what about it made that shift?
I felt it a little when I did cats in certain places. But I think that it was realizing what I had to offer, and that what I had to offer was unique,
Mhm.
and that only I could do that. Like I can only sing Heart of Stone like the way that I sang it.
Correct.
And Heart of like nobody else's version is going to be that version, just like nobody else's version is going to be Abby's, or
Mhm.
whoever. And I think that owning that was taking ownership about what I had to offer and be like, no, I deserve to be here,
Yay.
was big. And so like I feel like I just kind of got into that at the end. And so I felt like it was a little squandered,
Mm.
the first contract. And but I was like, lesson learned. Okay, lesson learned. I go away for the summer because my contract was up. Um and then I return. I think that I got the offer to return back to the show to take over Abby's contract right before we left for Malta. And so it was very nice to be able to go away and know that I was coming back to something.
Mhm.
However, life drastically changed over that summer because I really, like, for the first time, wrote my own music and sang my own music.
Mm.
And there is nothing quite like that because when I do solo shows, there's just a visceral difference between when I sing covers of songs and when I sing my own songs because
Yeah.
they're of me.
Right.
Um, and I've put everything that I had and have into them.
Was there something during that summer Malta trip that you were like, "Now is the time for me to start writing music as a dedicated practice," or why then was that the time where you really threw yourself into it?
Well, I am a master procrastinator, I've found. Because obviously nobody can write my music for me,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
And so this is the first time that I've not been held accountable to anybody else's schedules. Like if I need to learn a show, I learn the show in the amount of time that I
Yeah.
if I need to do a self-tape, I learn the material in the time allocated. However, the songs that I write don't get written until I sit down and write them.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot over the summer how important it is to have accountability, and how important it is to put yourself in uncomfortable situations, and how those are kind of the most fruitful circumstances that you can enter into and come out of the other end. And while it's very painful at times to, put so much of your private sacred self into material for other people to listen to where they might not get it. They might not know where you're coming from. They might when they sing along to the songs, they might have no idea what they're singing along to.
Mhm.
Um it's scary, but I do feel like I am putting into the world music that I wished I had had to
Oh,
listen to.
yay.
And so
Yeah.
that's kind of that's why, and so when I came back in the fall to return to the stage and sing somebody else's words again, there was a void. There
Mm.
was some kind of void where I felt unfulfilled to a certain
Mm.
degree. Not because I wasn't so thrilled to be a part of the show again, not because I wasn't excited to play with my castmates on stage and discover new
Mhm.
things and like lean into it more where I didn't lean into it the first time around. Um have the opportunity to feel more comfortable being there. Like, I had
Mhm.
staked my claim and like I deserve to be here. However, I did find myself being, like, very drained, and not writing my own stuff. Like, after I finished writing Blood in the Water in Malta, I didn't write another song until, like, yesterday.
Because it took so much out of you emotionally to get that out of
It took
you?
so much out of me to just sit down and be with myself, because I
Mhm.
always had an excuse. I was like, "Oh, gotta go to the
Yeah.
show,"
Mm.
or whatever. Like, I was always waiting to, like, have inspiration as opposed to just sitting
Right.
down and being like, no, just write something. It can be a shitty song. It's okay if it sucks. Just write something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do think that writing is one of the more difficult things. And this is just, writing a song, let alone like people that write entire novels or
Yeah.
whatever, like where they have to think about
Wow.
multiple things.
Yes.
Um so it was just perspective. It was, I think, 2022 in general and mostly surrounding Six because I had never really experienced anything like it. Was just a year of perspective shifts and also coming out of a pandemic and being angry about it and wanting more and wanting other people to want more and feeling let down when they didn't. And
Mhm.
but also realizing you can't hold other people accountable to your own standards. Like you have to do that for yourself.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
I sound so like Eckhart Tolle, but like
No, but that's the
I,
headspace that you're in right now, and I'm asking you to be present and honest about where you're at, and I think it's you talking about this journey, I think is really important for people to hear because we see shows like Six, which is such a
mhm,
phenomena about like, oh my God, I want to be a part of that. I love this so
yeah,
much. There are these shows that come around that really become huge parts of the musical theater canon, and Six is one of
Yeah.
them now. And there are so many people who love this show so desperately and idolize the characters as well as the
Yeah.
storylines, and but we're forgetting so often that there are people who are dedicating their lives to telling this story. This is their career, but it's also a part of their lives. And to really put the humanity back into, these things that seem larger than life, I think is really important to just remember that, not in the belittling of it, but like it is a job
Right. It
still,
is, yeah.
you
And there
know?
are days you wanna go, and there are days you don't wanna go, and, like, it's still never tinged with, like, I don't understand that a lot of other people would want to be in my shoes right now. Like, there's a lot of guilt involved. I think I felt a lot of guilt the second time around because I was like, "Why
Mm.
am I struggling so much with this?" Um,
With which part?
with, showing up and being present. And,
Mm,
like, because that's something that if you're not doing that on stage, what are you doing? And
correct.
I would sense myself falling short of that, and I would be very
Did you feel
disappointed.
that while you were in Cats?
Not as much because Cats was so on and off. I was, like, I would sing a song, I would go off stage, I would come back for,
Mhm.
like, a little dancey dance moment, and then I would come back at the end of act 1. So I was only in, like, 3 numbers as Grizabella in the first act, and then 2 numbers in
Right,
the second act, one of which being the greatest song in probably the entire music theater canon.
right.
So that was different to me, because it was part of Grizabella was she wasn't telling anybody else's story. In
Mm,
Six, you're on stage the entire time. You have to support people telling their own stories. And that's a beautiful thing about the show because you're on stage the whole time. It's so amazing to be clicked into that. It makes the show go by
yeah,
so fast. It creates good bonds within a cast as well.
yeah,
Or it has the potential to create good bonds within a cast.
yeah.
Um,
And it's also exhausting because you
yeah,
have to be on for 90 minutes.
exactly. And you have to be on. And so when I
Yeah.
would sense myself doing anything short of giving everything I had, I would feel very disappointed in myself. And then I would be like, that would infiltrate into the next day going into work, into the next show, because I'm like, okay,
Mm,
I've got to be better than last night, or I've got to be better than this matinee. Because,
mm,
there are people that this means a lot to in the audience. And I
yeah,
want the bond between the actors on stage and the audience to be revived again. I feel like it's been separated as of late. And what I loved about Six is that it did enable that to happen again, or
mm,
it was the possible there was a possibility of that again.
yeah. Well, with your going into this second Broadway contract that was now
Yeah,
yours, you were not, there for a medical leave. It
right.
was your role that you
Hmm.
had. Besides, obviously, the fact that at times it was really hard to feel present, or at times you were feeling like there was an emptiness given, maybe the fact that you've just given so much of yourself to your own
Yeah.
music. How was this experience for you overall?
Overall, I absolutely am so grateful for it.
Mhm.
I It's influenced greatly how I want to move on with my career.
May I ask what that is?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the best thing about Six is that it's good. A. It's
Mhm.
just good. It's good music. It's a good vibe. The book is fun. Um, and there's a level of frivolity to it, but also like it can be deeper than that if you want to look at it that way. Um,
Mhm.
However, it did I looked outside a bit more at what else is out there. And I was like, I think as far as what I want to give my heart and soul to, I think I need to take a small little break from music theater. Um, Not because I don't want to be involved in it, but because I want to care deeply about
Mm.
what I am involved in next.
Mhm.
And whatever that is, I have no idea what that is. I have no idea what
Yeah.
it is. It could be another musical, could be a play, could be my own music, it could be literally whatever is dropped in the universe drops into my lap, or I'm very open. But it did force me to look a bit at, what do I say yes, what auditions do I say yes to? Because
Mhm.
time is so valuable. Time is everything. And it's why I don't finish TV shows that I don't like anymore, or I don't finish books anymore that I
A
don't
book.
like anymore. I'm
Mhm.
like, I don't feel the need to push through this anymore because
Yeah.
it is not worth my time. At
Yeah.
least my taste, in my taste, it's not worth my time. And that I
Yeah.
think is currently the environment of most Broadway shows at the moment for me, is that like it's just a difference in taste.
Mhm.
And that doesn't, it's not a statement on or a judgment on any of the shows, on
Yeah.
any of the performers. It's just like, I'll take my break now just because I need a break. I need a
Yes.
break.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll see what comes of that.
Yeah. No, I think, we don't often talk about purposeful rest
Yeah.
or the word break, right? Because there's this stigma around, well, if you take a break, then somehow you've lost your momentum or something. But, arguably when one clues into why one is taking that, if it's from a place of earnesty and
Yeah.
vulnerability and truth, you will come back when you decide to in a way that is
Yes.
so much more fluid and stronger and in alignment with really what you want to be doing rather than one foot is always kind of out the door because maybe you are literally very
Yeah.
tired and you need an actual physical nap or like emotionally you've been in this rigmarole and you haven't had a second to calibrate about what it is that you really want or need,
Absolutely agree. I
you know
absolutely agree. I mean, the term like self love has been thrown around for years now. And I don't really know if you can actually define that. I think it's all very individual. Like, talk about like asking yourself why you need to take a break, like truly looking in, and also asking yourself why you're not taking a break. Are you
yeah.
not taking a break because you're afraid that that will stop everything? Or like,
Hmm.
are you not taking a break because, it could be for anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the inverse of that is a question that I know I often don't ask, like, "Why am I not?" I
Yeah, it's
don't do
that
that as
grind
much. It's more like,
mentality, It's like that's what
yeah.
New York tends to promote, is like, you're not a real New Yorker unless you are grind mentality, like hustle,
Mhm,
or else
mhm.
why are you here? Like, this is the city that never sleeps. And I'm like, oh, but I need 7+ hours to
Of
to
uninterrupted,
function.
beautiful, yeah. I'm curious if you mind just, like, going back a little bit, just kind of in this idea of, like, your career having been so not what people think it is when they see that you've been in shows.
Yeah.
Same thing with, like, your Cat's journey, with the Waitress journey, with
Oh
Jagged
yeah,
Little
Jagged.
Pill as
Forget about
well.
that.
Yeah, like, I mean, again, like, I know these stories a bit more, but do you mind sharing just, like, every single one of these was not a traditional, I go
Right.
in, I audition once,
Right.
and then I booked it.
Right.
Do you mind
Yeah,
sharing?
so Waitress was very similar to Cats. So Waitress, I had been involved in auditions for Waitress since I was still in college. So I was showcase like I graduated in 2015, and I during that spring, my spring graduating semester, I was sending in self tapes. It's so funny to look back at those self tapes because wow, what a drastically different performer I am. Um, of singing, I mean, I remember getting Sarah's demos in my inbox of
Yeah.
like songs that don't even exist in the show now.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and and submitting for that audition and that self tape, and then being asked, getting feedback. I had never gotten feedback from a casting director. And then that was right about the time that I was also in auditions and final callbacks for the revival of Les Mis, which I did not book, obviously. Um, but with Waitress, I was in a few times before I graduated, and then once I moved to the city, I was in a couple times, and then still nothing, still nothing. Was auditioning for the tour, was auditioning for Broadway again, was auditioning for da 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 da. Then same thing with Six, was called to start rehearsal the next day for 2 months of a show. While we were putting in a new Jenna, they needed somebody to fill the ensemble position so Stephanie could move into Jenna's role. So that was already like very untraditional, a very untraditional way to enter into a show. um
And that was your Broadway
That was my
debut.
Broadway debut in 2018, and then
Mhm.
I was away for 2 wee I finished that contract, was away for, like, 1, 2 weeks, and then there was another cast member that needed, leave of absence, and so I went into her role for the leave of absence. And so it kind of set the precedent, in my mind that I was only good enough to replace people.
Mm.
No, that was not the truth. It was just the
Yeah.
circumstance. Um, so whereas when I was, in college, when I was young, I was like, no, I am I am so I'm special. And I,
Yeah.
had this idea. And then to have my reality kind of turned around and be, replacement, like medical leave, temporary replacement, leave of absence. And then Jagged Little Pill comes around, also only a limited contract, a vacation swing, which was the most terrifying thing. I was only in rehearsals for 3 days and I was already overwhelmed. I was like, I don't know that I could do this. And I don't know that I wanna do
Mm.
it, actually.
Mm.
But I was of the mentality of like, "Oh, I just need to work. I need a new thing. I gotta pad the resume," you know?
Yeah.
Not working from a place of intention at all. Um, I didn't start saying no to things until summer of 2020 was the first time that I was like, "You know what? Actually, this doesn't align."
Mhm.
Actually, and I don't know that I don't know that I would have thought that had I not gotten permission to explore that part of my mind by people that loved me.
Mm.
Like, I don't know what decisions I would have made. And I do think that I think it is all about mentality and where you place your worth. I know that sounds so
Mhm.
cheesy, but it really, like, I did notice things start shifting. Something shifted as soon as I was like, "You know what? I can see why this has merit. Let somebody else do it." Like, I'm sure there are people that would love to do it. I
Yeah.
personally don't want to. And
Yeah.
that is a good enough reason. It is
Yeah.
a good
It's
enough
not
reason for you to be like, "You know what? I don't want to do that. It does not fulfill me."
even if it's not a good enough reason, it's
It's
a
a reason.
reason.
Yeah,
Like, you don't get to give a qualifier to it. It's a
exactly.
reason.
It's a very
Yeah.
valid reason.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, yeah, my agents were a little pissed at me, but, whatever. If
Mhm.
that's the worst thing that happens to me, some people are mad at me every now and then, okay, charmed life.
Yeah. Yeah, then at least you get to go to sleep at night knowing that you are waking
Yeah.
up full of intention in an ideal way that allows you to hopefully bring in opportunities where you get to show up. I think
Yeah.
that's the thing where it's like if one is operating under the understanding that you have to take everything and you need to do all
Oh my
these
god, yeah.
things because it has to come the way that it comes, and if I don't take it this way then blah blah blah, and it's like, well, again, as we started in the beginning, like, we don't have a crystal ball about
No.
it, right? And it's like if you are excited as much as you possibly can be about the thing that is coming down the pipeline for you, then you're going to show
Yeah.
up, you, not like a version of you that feels obligated to be there. It's a very different way of being
Well, and it goes
present.
back to time. It's like my time is everybody's time is valuable.
Mhm.
And there's, people have been saying, "You have the same amount of time in a day as Beyonce has, and look how much she achieves." And I'm like, okay, it's not really a fair comparison, is it? Because
She probably has assistants and she has a lot of money that she could delegate other
and also
things and
people that
like
are like guiding her. She has guidance, like
Mhm.
a lot of guidance.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that I have found to be over the past couple of years massively important. When I was a little girl, I used to say, like, little girl, I used to say, "Carrie do it by herself." Like, I was
Like out loud
out
you'd say
loud.
this to
I was If
yourself?
anybody tried to help me with anything, I was like, "I do it by myself. Carrie do it by herself." It's third person, mind you. I was speaking about myself in third
Obsessed.
person. I was like, "Carrie do it by herself." And um that's very cute. It's a very cute story. Um but over the past couple of years, I have realized I've always kind of thought it's always been in the back of my brain like, no, you need other people. You do need other people. Um I don't think I realized how much I
Hmm.
needed other people until like the past couple of years because we're not meant to do it alone. And as much as I would love to not be disappointed by people, you will be, but also
Yeah.
sometimes you won't be. And that's nice. It's really
Mhm.
nice. And it's nice to have people to talk to and be able to say things like, yeah, I mean, six wasn't all, gummy drops and roses. It was, hard in its own way. And be able to be heard and
Mhm.
be given permission to like explore parts of yourself that maybe you're terrified of, but then somebody is like, no, you're safe, it's okay, you're safe.
How did you find or how are you finding those people and learning that those people are people with whom you can trust?
I mean, I was thrust a massive lifeboat when I met my current boyfriend. Like, I don't know if I would be writing music without him. I really don't. I've always wanted to,
Mm.
but I don't think that I would have actually done it because it's like
Mhm.
talked about earlier, it's just scary and I didn't know how. And I think when you don't know how to do something, there's this huge drive to like figure out how to do it. Like go to YouTube University, do whatever. But like you forget that you're surrounded by resources and
Mm.
putting yourself out there and being like, you know what? If I text this person about, their real I'm just giving a random example. That if I text this
Right.
person that, has had, a great producing career or whatever, they could very much say, I don't like your song enough to produce it. Come to me with
Mhm.
the next one. And that's terrifying. It's terrifying. um, so to have people around you that you sense energies in people, right? Like when I met you, I was like, oh, we're gonna get along. She has a lot of energy, but we are gonna complement each other well.
Yeah.
And we did. And
Yeah.
so it's like I know that like I could reach out to you and you would hear
Oh,
me and
yeah.
vice versa. Even though like we don't
Yeah.
hang out all the time, even though we're really shitty at connecting. I do know that if
Yeah.
I needed you, I would, but it's a rarity. I think it's rare. Um,
Yes. That's why I ask it
yeah.
because it isn't something that I think comes very naturally to at least myself. I know it's like the curation of people that I know
Right.
that even if I'm not maintaining on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, that I know in my heart of hearts, I've worked very hard on being very present with cultivating
Mhm.
that safety net for when I need it.
Yeah.
It's hard
And it's
though,
law of
and I do not
attraction.
have.
It's
Oh
law of
yeah.
attraction too. Like I so firmly believe even more and more every single day that what you put into the universe, you receive back.
Mhm.
Like I just do believe that. That doesn't mean I'm not going to have moments of weakness. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to be an utter bitch at times. But it does mean that like if I am trying to be the most honest and authentic person that's walking in integrity as much as I possibly can, even with my flaws, then I will
Mhm.
attract people who are also trying to do that
Yeah.
because it's just it's different. You don't have to know. I remember we were in Malta and we were walking on one of the bays and there was this girl reading. I still remember it. She was laying down on the bench and she had like a backpack that was like overflowing with books and like her reusable water bottle and she was just like laying there reading a book or like journaling something like that. And I was like, I do not have to meet this girl to know that we would get along because
Yeah.
you see that was a very obvious like common thread of like I love reading books. I normally carry around 5 or 6 with me at any given time. I love
Yeah.
journaling, like whatever. Like that's obvious, but I do feel like there are less obvious ways that give you that same sensation. And
Yeah.
so just trust, I guess, which is
Yeah.
extraordinarily difficult for me, but
Yeah. Same.
it's worth it. I think it's worth
Same.
it.
Same.
So I'm
Agreed.
told.
Agreed. As we wind down our time, is there anything that is on your heart that you wish that you had shared that I didn't ask? Or is there something that you wish you knew earlier in your career that you would like to impart?
I mean, I say it pretty much every time that I'm asked this question, because I still struggle with it every single day, is comparison. um,
Mhm.
I the things that go through my mind about myself on a regular basis when I compare myself to other people are pure abuse. And
Mhm.
so I am trying to figure out ways and trying to learn more about myself, um, in order to hopefully sense that demon before it rears its ugly head and be like, you don't need to
Yeah.
do that though. Because you really, like, it is that simple. Like, I do not need to compare myself to other people.
Mhm.
It's not useful. It's not inspiring either. Like, there's a difference in comparing yourself and being inspired by other people. Both can
Yeah.
render a sense of jealousy, but one is useful and one is not. And
Mhm.
so I am really trying to do the more being inspired by people thing. It's hard because I still Google people's ages. I'm like, oh, we just watched Hunger Games for the first time. Well,
Oh
he
my
had
gosh.
seen it, but I had never seen Hunger Games before. And I honestly can't believe that. But
Same.
I was like, wow, Jennifer Lawrence, because I think she's such a great actress, and I've loved watching her career, but this is like where it all
Yeah.
began. And I was like, okay, how old was she, which is 2012? How old was she? She's like, I don't even remember, 20, no, she was like 17 or something. And I was like, I just wanted to jump out my window. I was like, I'm 29. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm in acting school, like pretending that I'm an actress, and like, what am I doing? However, once I got out of that, I was like, oh, it's not linear.
Yeah.
What a comforting thought, and what a terrifying thought is that it's not linear. It's both, I think. So
Mhm.
it's not really like advice or anything. I don't know how qualified I am to give advice, but I definitely know that I'm not the only one that struggles with that. And I think
Yeah.
that it's always nice to know that you're not the only one that struggles with something.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just just me and J Law, you know?
Yeah. I mean, many of us. Thank you for taking us on this journey of sharing how truly nonlinear this career is, and that when one views success, to remember that there are so many factors that have led up to the thing that we
Yeah.
see, and a reminder of how resilient you are, but also how, in order to be an artist in this field, career, mind you the word, or industry, or just, to pursue something that is not linear, that is a creative part of yourself. It is a vulnerable part of who you are, a sharing of your inner parts of
Yeah.
yourself. Like, in order to do that for a long period of time, learning slowly and surely how to begin to feel comfortable with all of those things inside your brain that tell you you're not good
Right.
enough. Get, those vampires, as we said in
Oh,
Titus Show.
hey.
Uh, hey, bringing it
TBT.
all back. Oh my god, literally. But to really start to get as comfortable as possible with the fact that these things will continue to rear their
Yeah.
heads. They will. And hopefully, as you keep growing as an individual, the way in which they manifest themselves in you will become a little less
Yeah.
intense, or you have other ways of navigating them or coping with them. But I'm really grateful that you shared in such a way, because I really think that we forget
Yeah.
all of that, or it could feel like we're isolated in our own experiences and that no one else is going through it, especially these people that we see on
Yeah.
stages that we want to be
We're just
on.
like, "Oh, she's in 6. She must have, such a blast of a life." It's like, but that spreads across. You're like, "Wow, it's not like that all the time."
Yeah. And it's also nuanced. It
Yeah.
can look that way, and also,
Yes.
it's this and that. You can
Absolutely.
hold multitudes at once. So, I love you the most. I'm so grateful that you are in my life, and
Same.
that we had that little bubble to, like, really come back
I
to,
know.
learning what it was to re-enjoy theater, live
Yeah.
theater, after such a intensive shutdown
And
time.
what a great
And
little ditty to come back with, you know? If nothing else, we just really had a great time, and I think a
oh my
lot of
god.
people had a really good time. That final show, though,
Oh,
nothing
yeah.
will compare with us all piling onto that cannon.
I
In a museum, mind you, what were we thinking?
Unclear. That
No
was a Max
respect.
thing. How dare he? How dare he? I love you so much.
I will talk to you so soon. Thank you for having me.
Oh my god, thank you for being here.